We're inching our way up a 3-kilometre farm track in southern central Portugal. That's the sound of my little car taking on the thick mud of the Alentejo. The sheer amount of mud is very unusual, but January and early February brought weeks of unrelenting rain and wild storms to Portugal. It damaged roads, it felled trees, and here it's left the track potholed, puddled and thick with claggy mud.
Oh wow.
As the track winds through the farmland, hundreds of cork oaks come into view, dotted across the fields, spaced out, some 10 or 20 metres apart. This isn't thick woodland, but miles of trees with a lot of light in between them. And it's easy to tell that they're corks. Their trunks are a dark reddish brown, stripped of their bark, and some of the thicker branches can be too. Look at this one. This one's dead, but wow. Imagine the critters in that. Very old. So why exactly am I bumping through the mud to look at cork trees? I'm Leyla Kazim, and it all started last year when I left the UK for Portugal. A story you might remember from the episode The New Good Life. The summer before I moved, I posted on social media about a little wine festival that had blown me away. Yes, you did hear that correctly. The €10 entry fee includes an unlimited amount of gorgeous local wines, and you drink the wine out of an actual glass. And then the following year, soon after my big move, some of you actually came to that festival, which then somehow spiralled into an invitation from a local winemaker to make my very own batch of wine with them.
So, with the grape picking, Corey's been doing it for 2 minutes and his box is full, and I've been doing it for about 15.
And because I've just uprooted my life, I've been paying closer attention to the things that give a place its identity. Cork feels like one of those unglamorous but essential pieces of the winemaking puzzle, something most of us probably take for granted, but that quietly holds up a huge part of Portugal's culture and industry. So what's going on? How does a small nation become the heart of the global cork industry? Why are researchers elsewhere now paying attention to how the forests are run? And with a changing climate and shifting drinking habits, how secure is this ancient material we've relied on for centuries? Before I could even begin to unpick that, I needed a Cork 101. Why winemakers choose it? What makes a cork good? So I went back to one of the people who got me into this story in the first place, Ricardo Santos from winemakers Casamaru, just at the end of my road from my plot of land. These are the winemakers who, last September, invited me to create that batch of pet nat. And of course, my first question had to be, Ricardo, how is my wine doing?
As it's not so warm, the fermentation is taking a little bit longer than we expected, but I think that probably for the quality will be much better as the fermentation will be much slowly.
I'm learning what makes a wine taste good, but what makes a good cork? Ricardo told me that, of course, their more everyday wines get the cheaper, lower quality corks, while the more expensive wines need the higher quality, more expensive corks because those bottles are designed to be kept for much longer.
The entry level, we use like a crushed cork. We call it twin tops. With all the contact with the wine will be a disc of natural cork. And between them, it's a crushed cork that is lower quality, but it's very well controlled, that we can have a perfect wine. In the top wines, it's a natural cork, so that's only one piece. But sometimes we can have more problems using a one-piece cork because it's less treatments. And so with that, You can have some TCA, that is trichloroanisole, so that's the problem, like you can have like a flavor of mold. Some people, sometimes they don't understand that it's from the cork.
I see. Is that what, you know, when sommeliers open a wine and then they smell the cork, is that what they're checking?
Yes. This is one of the challenge that we have is
because
cork.
you spend months or years making a wine.
Yes.
And then imagine if it fails at the last hurdle because of the cork. That would be devastating.
Yes. Usually we don't have so much problems, but usually the wines, they don't stay so long in the bottle. So we need a higher quality to be like a wine for 10, 20 years old.
And the purpose of a cork is to keep the wine inside the bottle, but also you want some oxygen to come in. Is that right?
So because otherwise, if it was a crown cap, probably you'll not have evolution. So the wine stops there and you don't have oxygen. So when we bottle the wine, usually the tannins are very much more tough. So they are much harder, and with the low oxygen inside the bottle, so the tannins will be more round. So the evolution of the wine will be much more nice.
And Ricardo, you said you previously worked amongst the cork trees. I didn't realize that. What did you used to do, and when was this?
It was when I was still studying the winemaking. I was not doing the cutting the trees with axe. I was too young, and it was a very hard job to do it. So but I was doing the transport because it was doing the extraction with the eggs from the trees. Needs to be very careful because can't hurt the tree.
A tree's cork is only harvested once every 9 years in the heat of the summer. But even then,
we arrived, and if it was like a fog day, and some days it was impossible to take. So the trees didn't allow it to take the cork, so we get back to home because it was impossible to take the cork.
That's so interesting. So if the temperature of the day is too cold, the cork just doesn't come off.
No.
Really?
And so if it was too cold, so it's not so easy to take out
It's like the tree is cold and wants to keep its jacket up.
Yes.
Wow.
You can feel about it.
And how is the pay for the people who work in this cork industry, the people on the land?
For the average salary, it's much higher. So nowadays we are doing the pruning in the vineyards, and so this is half of the price that we receive it in that times for the cork extraction. It's a dangerous work because you need to go upside of the trees with axe. Sometimes the trees are very tall.
Ricardo Santos, winemaker at Casamaru. I'm still genuinely surprised that Portugal produces so many of the world's corks. It's not a big country. And when you think of its landscape and exports, you don't think trees. You think wine, olive oil, sardines. And because most of us rarely see cork oaks in our daily lives, it's hard to picture the sheer scale of forest needed to supply more than half of the world's stoppers. Someone else who became fascinated by this industry is Carlos Manuel Faísca, a historian who did his PhD on the economic history of cork and is now writing a book about its modern evolution. Olá, Carlos.
Sim.
Leyla.
Fala português?
Pouco.
Mas pode falar inglês. Mas é da
We're
onde?
meeting in the heart of Cork country, the town of Cowoosh. We've just bumped off a very potholed road and arrived at a surprisingly futuristic building surrounded by industrial units. The building is clad in cork. Even the car park canopy is shaded with it. Inside this building, which is called the Cork Observatory, there's a big display of all sorts of things made from cork, not just stoppers, but shoes, clothes, stools. There's even a sofa.
This is a very ancient artifact. Not this one, but the idea, it's very ancient because cork being such a good thermal isolator, workers use this, at least from the Middle Ages, to put their food when they go to the forest to work.
with a lid made of
Yeah, it's a
cork.
container. It's a container.
Keeps it cool, yeah.
Keeps it cool
That's
or,
so nice.
or keeps it warm.
Or keeps it warm. Cork's been used for hundreds of years in many different ways. But how did it come to grow so abundantly here? And when did the industry get so huge?
The cork oak tree has its best agroecological conditions to grow in the western part of the Mediterranean and within it in the Portuguese territory. Regarding industry, Portugal became the world leading producer only in the 20th century. In the 19th century, there were very important industries, including in the UK, the USA, France, Spain, also Portugal, but a little bit less. The thing is, one advantage that it has, the world's largest supply of raw material. So, more or less, the 1930s onward, Portugal was and still is the main industrial transformation of cork.
So you're saying it's because they had the most trees?
That's a factor, but that's not the only factor. It always had the most trees. In the 19th century, for instance, Spain had a lot more industry. Germany had almost the same. France had a little bit more. The UK, unfortunately, did not publish industrial statistics in the late 19th century, so I don't know. But I can guess probably you also had, because the most important world companies of the 19th century were British. And then, for a group of reasons that are very connected with economic policy, Portugal became the world leading country. It's a thesis. You cannot explain a thesis in one line. It's impossible, I'm sorry.
Cork wasn't being grown in those other countries, but for a long time, places like the UK, Germany and the US all had busy cork manufacturing industries. And well into the early 20th century, they were turning out more finished cork products than Portugal itself. That began to change in the mid-1930s when more of the manufacturing shifted back to the Iberian Peninsula. Spain and Portugal started to dominate the industry. And then Spain's civil war changed everything. Factories and forests suddenly sat on opposite sides of the conflict.
The forests were on the Franquist side and the factories were on the Republican side. When the war ended, Franco has a very strong autarkic regime, and the cork is a world trade. So he had a lot of restrictions in importing certain goods important for the production and machinery and all of that. And in those years, Portugal invested in improving the raw material production, even becoming bigger the areas of cork production. This is regarding Spain. Regarding the USA, the UK and Germany was something else. Those countries started to substitute cork for petroleum products. And industry basically disappeared there.
And the lower wages paid in Portugal also made it a more attractive place for companies to set up manufacturing. But Portugal's dominance today isn't just about manufacturing, it's also because of the trees themselves. These trees grow slowly. They take decades to mature and a lifetime to reach their full potential, which means they only make economic sense if the land around them works too, if animals can graze beneath their canopy, if farmers can earn enough to wait 9 years between harvests. And to understand that system, you really need to step into it.
Yeah, we can go down and you will see a different...
We're back on the farm track, but this time the view is opening out. The fields are dotted with cork oaks, spaced widely, like someone placed them carefully by hand. And this is where I meet Francisco Alves, a regenerative farmer who's trying to rebuild this landscape from the ground up.
So this is a family farm that is in the family about 5 or 6 generations. We have 700 hectares and we are in an area that have the name of Sierra de Monforado, and is a specific region of Alentejo that have a huge density of trees and is not so dry like South Alentejo.
And I think these are some of the biggest and oldest cork trees I've seen so far. How old are some of these?
Yeah, it's a good question. I believe that we have trees with 200, 300 years.
Incredible.
So it's the perfect scenario to raise livestock. because it's difficult to do big productions under the trees. It's impossible.
So how many animals can your land sustain?
Right now we have 200 cows, 100 sheep, 100 goats, and 50 sows of Lentian pig. You can see the pigs here.
Oh my gosh! Look at the pigs! Oh, they're small, huh?
It's a Portuguese breed. They live always outside, okay, and they eat the acorn, and they can put a lot of value in the acorn because it's a magnificent meat, and is the only animal in the world that can produce a marble meat only with natural resource.
Francisco tells me regeneration here is all about the rotation of animals between different areas and letting the soil rest.
So the montado system, this is an agro-silvopastorist system made by men 10,000 years ago, is the perfect system to use livestock.
You were saying that the animals, they each have sort of a different role and they help solve problems. Can you explain what each animal does that helps to look after the soil and the trees?
So in our system, the cows, they come in open areas with a lot of grass production. We have the pigs that eat the acorn. We have the goats that eat the brambles and the bush areas near the water lines that allowed us to don't use the machinery, pesticides, and don't have the fires. And we have the sheep that we use like a cow, but in areas in more specific areas of the farm, more small areas. It's like gardeners, so you use in small areas of the farm.
We're visiting in February, and I'm curious to see that the trees still have lots of leaves, not like our bare oaks at home, because of course, corks are a variety of oak.
They don't drop all the leaves, but a big percentage of the leaves follow of the cork tree.
How long does it take to harvest one tree?
It's very, very fast. Depend of the tree, of course. If they are very big with different angles, you need more time. But if they are an easy tree, 10 minutes.
So literally one person climbs up,
Yes.
I guess makes a ring around...
No, they cut like this. Of the trunk in one side, in the other side too, and they put it out.
Right, so you basically do vertical cuts,
Yes,
and
vertical
then
cuts.
it just pulls away.
Pulls away.
It just pulls away.
Yeah.
So when was this tree harvested? What year?
You have the number in the tree. But
So on the trunk there is a 24,
Yeah.
okay, sprayed. So when this bark is ready to harvest in 7 years,
Yes.
it would have grown a thickness.
Yes, about 3-4 centimeters.
And you can see the layers from the previous harvest.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just amazing because I can't think of any other tree that is harvested like this.
No.
And then if you think about it, it's basically a harvest per decade, really. So in someone's lifetime, one tree is not harvested that many times.
Yes. And for the first harvest, you have to wait 25, 30 years. So it's because of that we try to maintain this system, because it's the unique system. It's only exists in Portugal, in Spain, and we are losing about 10,000 hectares of this system per year.
I'll pause here to say that this loss of 10,000 hectares per year isn't documented as fact. However, we do know that in the Alentejo alone, over 90,000 hectares of montado disappeared between 1990 and 2006. And scientists say pressures on the system have only intensified since. Francisco says much of that is down to bad practice by landowners.
Imagine in a conventional management of farming, people think that the livestock is a problem, so they need to use the tractor to till the soil because of the fires. And so erosion, more dry years, more strong rain season. So more erosion, the trees are not healthy and more disease come. So it's very important to explain to the people how we can manage the animals correctly to increase fertility in the soil, in the system, and be more resilient.
Francisco's farm is now seen as a model, showing how trees, soil and animals can work together. And another income stream has grown out from that attention. Courses for farmers and visitors from all over keen to learn about this regenerative approach that's become such a buzzword in agriculture.
We have a strong focus in the education. We organize open days in the farm. I help other farmers to change this different approach, a more regenerative approach of farming. Yeah, I stay in the farm and I help different projects around too.
Why do more people want to farm in this way?
I don't know if more people want to do it. I believe 5 years ago, some people have the curiosity to come here and to understand what is possible to do or no, but some of them have a lot of excuse that this is functioning in your farm, but my farm, it's impossible to do it. But at the same time, we see that when you do an open day, more people come, and it's not only about farmers, it's about consumers too. People want to understand why our meat is different.
So every field is on a clock: graze, move, wait. And when you look down in a resting field, I find acorns sprouting. Hopefully, a new generation of trees to come. And here's another issue, according to researcher Carlos Manuel Faisca. Where can the new cork forests go?
The prediction model for 2050 is in the southern Alentejo there will be no cork oak growing. In central Alentejo there will be just a little bit. And that the optimum of cork oak is going to move north. The problem is north you have small properties. That's why they have eucalyptus, because it's more profitable at the short term. And cork is only profitable in large estates.
Eucalyptus offers quick returns, but also a higher fire risk, unlike cork, which is far more resistant.
Unless there is a public policy that pays the small landowners to put a cork oak tree over there, I don't see how we are going to manage the area. Actually, we are losing area, and that's a problem.
And value matters here. The montado survives when its products do. Francisco sells his organic meat to a specialist Lisbon butcher run by 4 sisters who buy only from selected producers. They supply his pork to local customers and to restaurants that care about quality, including Apego, owned by celebrated chef Aurora Goy. So, I went to meet her in central Porto and asked what eating acorns does for the flavour of the meat, known here as porco preto.
Yeah, the meat is more intense. You can in a way find some dry fruit flavors.
So if someone was cooking this meat at home, what would they do with it at home?
We used to do it our version, but that also very kind of a traditional way. We use it too in Portugal. There is a very classic dish with this pork, which is called porco alentejano, which is made with some clams. So you have the pork and you cook the clams with it, which is very good. So we used to do it. Then we used to reduce the stew of the clams with some butter and just have a very dense sauce on the top with some seaweed.
Seaweed.
It's very salty, and remember also the sea.
And you know, in Portugal, they really use all parts of the pig.
Yeah.
So how would they use the rest of the porco preto? What would they do with everything else?
They use a very traditional way, we call it cabeça de chara. You cook the head, and then you cut everything off the head, and then you put it in the plate, like a pâté, like a terrine. And then it makes like a small rectangle.
Oh, I see.
And then you get it cold, and then you cut it. It's a very collagen and gelatin.
Yes.
Then when it gets cold, it gets ready to cut. And then you use the blood. You can fry it, which is the normal way of doing it. You can do pavas de sarabulho, which is very traditional here in the north. But this is the blood with the meat, and you cook it, and you get like kind of a very dense soup. Wow. And you just eat it like that with a lot of cumin. Everything is used in the pork. And then in Porto, you use the tripe. So in Portugal, you really eat everything from the pork, everything.
This meat, Aurora explained, is celebrated. It costs more, and she says people in Portugal seem to understand and recognise why that is. Before we leave the Alentejo, I asked regenerative farmer Francisco Alves what message he has for for consumers who might open a bottle of wine this evening?
Try to understand what is the cork. When the consumer understands, they can do better decisions and help farmers to change the management. Because if the farmer change but they don't get any return, it's impossible to change.
Francisco's message is, when people value cork, they help protect the land it comes from. But this story doesn't stop in the montado. To understand the future of cork, you have to see what happens next. And much of that takes place a long way from the trees in a huge factory about 40 minutes drive south of Porto.
So this is like armor for the tree. So it protects against fire, protects against most insects, it protects against drought.
If the montado is slow, this is the opposite. I'm on the factory floor at Amorim, the world's largest cork manufacturer. And as you can hear, it is loud. There are all sorts of belts moving, corks around, stacks of bark, lots of workers doing different tasks, grading the cork, pushing it through machines to be sliced. Showing me around is Carlos de Jesus, Amorim's communications director.
How many corks do you produce in this factory a day?
In total, about 23 million a day.
It's a vast number, but looking around, you can see how they get to it. But it's not all completely mechanized. This sound you're hearing now is a machine being used by 3 men, hand punching individual corks. The machine is basically powering the process, but the men are selecting where to make the cut and draw the punch into the wood.
As much as we use machine learning, deep learning, AI, all the fancy words of the jour, if you're going to create a beauty like this one that is going to seal a bottle that can cost thousands of pounds, it's not AI that is able to do it better. This is actually the best paid job on the shop floor. If you think that this cork can end up being as much as 3-4 euros a unit, mind you, for a bottle that costs 2,000, the weight is not as much as a 30-cent cork on a 10 or 15 pound bottle. We understand that. But for these, we're talking about the very best stoppers there are.
Above us, there are huge black and white photos hanging, showing the factory decades ago. And what's striking is how much has changed, but also how much hasn't. To understand how the company sees its future, I head to meet the man in charge. Antonio Amorim has been leading the company for decades, and he's also the 4th generation of his family to run it.
The heritage that we have received has been a very positive one, mainly because we work with an absolutely unique material. And that's what makes the 4,500 people working at Amorim passionate about, is the love for cork.
As the boss of this huge company, you must feel a lot of responsibility or pressure to kind of ensure the industry keeps going and is alive, because so many thousands of people depend on it and it's such a big part of the country's identity. When you think ahead, what are the biggest threats to the industry that you see?
Today, people are saying that wine and alcohol consumption mainly is stopping the growth of our industry. The trend is clearly for people to drink less, but better. I was just recently in America when we have seen that the consumption on wine on young people went from 9 to 14%. So, we need to really analyze further what needs to be done. So, less alcohol drinking, certainly better alcohol drinking. That's the segment where cork is. Looking forward, how to overcome all these limitations is really to try to research more on the potential use of cork. We cannot limit ourselves. We need to stay loyal and faithful to our mission statement, which is to add value to cork.
75% of the cork they manufacture here goes into cork stoppers, although they do also produce cork for flooring, insulation, shoes and so on. People drinking less wine isn't the first hurdle this industry has faced. Cork taint, also known as TCA, pushed winemakers towards synthetics, so Amorim developed ways to strip it out, which is why every stopper here is treated and tested repeatedly. Back on the factory floor, Carlos shows me the racks of stoppers being inspected.
The lasers that you are seeing scan each one of these corks, create an image that the computer is going to compare with what's on that defined memory pattern.
So this machine is basically mapping the pores, the holes.
Or the absence of it.
Or the absence of it, okay. Yes.
So obviously, that was a perfect one. We just had a flash of perfection.
In another building, I see more lasers being used, this time with gas and heat to check for TCA presence. So does all this testing mean that synthetic closures are no longer a threat to Antonio Amorim's business?
Synthetic closures basically have no role to play. They don't bring competitiveness. They don't bring any facility of opening or closing. Other prefers a more convenient closure like a screw cap or a true premium natural closure like cork. And because wine and alcohol consumption is very much aspirational, I think that the cork will be the winner at the end.
Now, the price of cork over the past few years has generally trended upwards. And when we look at Amorim, it's the biggest player in the market by far compared to the next ones. Some growers we have spoken to express concerns that having one big dominant player limits competition in the market. What do you have to say about that? Do you think the prices you offer to growers is competitive?
I mean, we would always like to pay more, but we need to have two things in mind. First, the quality of the cork must be there, because if we have good quality cork, we can produce more high-end corks for the most iconic wines in the world. But I think that the concern here has to do more with the volume of the cork that they have from harvest to harvest, rather than with the price. I mean, we would love to be able to pay a higher price to the cork growers, meaning that there will be more interest for people to invest in new plantations, and more availability of cork would exist in the future. We have to find the right balance between supply and demand. One thing I can tell you, if Amorim did not exist in the industry, I think that the price of cork would not be at the level that it is today, will be much lower.
But there's one concern that could be bigger.
The fact that we have climate change does not help. The degree of mortality of some of these trees has increased, but most of these trees have been naturally born. So we are having a natural regeneration of 2% that Amorim is trying to intervene in the market by adding new man-planted cork plantations. So we're trying to take what we call a production forest that today represents about 5% of the total production to about 15%. The remainder, the 85%, is still going to be what we call a conservation forest, where the natural regeneration mostly takes place. So, I mean, the cork raw material availability is something that we are tackling.
Which is why Carlos de Jesus and I are heading south, far from the factory, to see what these new forests might look like on a huge 3,300 hectare site that Amorim bought a few years ago. And there we meet another Carlos Abreu.
Where are we going, Carlos? We straight ahead?
The estate is called Rio Frio, Cold River, and it looks like an abandoned town. Actually, I'm told some of it was even used for a film set, but there are a few offices here. Carlos Abreu explains the land used to be a huge vineyard, but the vines were wiped out by a disease. What's left are rows of mature cork oaks that the previous owner planted between the vines.
That's why the trees are completely in line, and this is completely different from all the other forest of cork oaks that you can find here in Portugal. Trees were planted in line because at that period he thought that shade could be really interesting for the vine. And nowadays we know that it's not true.
Now, Amorim is planting new cork oaks between those rows. Young trees threading the gaps, line after line.
So these young saplings that are here, have they been planted in order to replace trees, or are they here in order to just monitor how they respond to these various variables?
So basically we are trying to pass from 100 trees per hectare to 400. So at this precise moment, the large trees have a distance of 10 meters between them. So now we are trying to apply a distance of 5 meters. So we are trying to put almost 4 times more trees in the same surface, so to create a bigger density. And why? Because they will have a lot of competition, and so they are going to grow really vertically, and with the right clipping formation we will shape them to put them with the straighter trunk as possible, because they will be much more easier to peel.
Can we talk a bit about the irrigation system? Most cork forests don't have irrigation in place, but I have learnt that whilst cork oaks can withstand drought quite well, they do need water. So can you explain to me how this irrigation system works?
In this particular case, it's quite simple. We are using a tank. We do the irrigation only for new plants. So on the first 9-10 years, then we will stop. We don't want spoiled plants. We don't want spoiled trees. We want really well-adapted trees to each place.
And so why are you irrigating them at all? Because, cork trees can grow.
It's easy to explain. One of the reasons is because the cork oak is a bimodal species, so it will grow much more. It has 2 biggest periods of growth, which are spring and autumn. During the summer, it stops immediately because of the critical conditions such as temperature and lack of water. So by irrigating in the summer, you will create kind of a bridge between spring and autumn. So instead of 2 growing periods, you will have 3 or just 1, a much larger one. So that's why, and that's one of the main keys to reduce the period of the first harvest from 20-25 years to 10-12. Because that's the only way to give some confidence and interest to forest producers to keep investing on this kind of culture.
So I suppose the water is firstly to ensure the saplings don't die,
of course,
when they're in this young, vulnerable stage, but also to reduce the time for that first harvest. It takes so long to get your first harvest.
Let's keep it interesting. In forest engineering, we learned that eucalyptus, it's for you, pine trees for your kids, and cork oaks for your grandkids, with some luck.
And you're trying to bring the cork oaks to you?
More or less.
The water for the irrigation, where is it coming from?
Groundwater and the lakes.
Is that a lot of water?
We have beneath our feet the biggest reservoir of groundwater in the Iberian Peninsula. At the same time, we have 2 of the biggest lakes in the region of Lisbon. We don't want to spoil them. We want to keep them well adapted.
This is also the research ground, genetics and growth, trying to shorten the wait to the first harvest without losing quality.
Are not only dedicated to all the management story, we are also dedicated to investigation, research, especially with genetics. We now know all the sequence of DNA of the cork oak, and we determined that there are 4 very important markers, which are plants that are more resistant to drought and climate changes, plants that are more resistant to a very specific insect, plants that are better quality cork producers, and plants that grow way faster than the others.
Is that what these...
No. These were planted with acorns from Rufrio.
Do the trees, the cork communities, the cork industry and all of that, do they need more protection in some way?
I think we don't need more protection. We need more understanding. And we need more awareness as consumers, all of us, of the repercussions that those purchasing decisions carry. You know what? It also carries a sound that I know you cannot, but imagine we could run a poll around the world and we could ask everybody, so give me the 5 happy sounds of humankind. I am sure that pop will be one of them. That is a carrier of good news. Mm-hmm. And to lose that, and the great sustainability story that comes with it, to lose the great technical solution from a packaging point of view that gave us all the great wines in the world. I mean, really, would the world be a better day the day after? I don't think so.
And now the sound effect.
That's very good. You've done that.
That was a good one.
That was a good one. That is a good sound.
That's a good Cork.
I was practicing this for a long time.
Carlos Abreu from Amarim at the Rio Frio plantation. So we've seen what the industry is doing, planting, researching, trying to secure Cork's future. But out here, in the Montado, the future still comes down to the people who care for these trees day after day.
For me, it's a natural garden. It's imagine it. I think this is the man try to do the job of the God. You know, it's like if you can put the animals here, if you can, the humans can live here without damage the system. If you can have the wildlife, you can. So we can all live in the same frequency here. So I think it's a natural garden made by man, and and what I said before, I think it's the man try to be the God in a certain way.
A landscape shaped by people, held together by a lot of patience, and by the trees that take a lifetime to grow. Maybe the real story of Cork isn't just about stoppers or factories or even wine. It's about what we choose to value and the worlds that survive because of the choices we make.
Hello, I'm John York and I want to tell you about Opening Lines, a series from BBC Radio 4 in which I'll be looking at books, plays, poems and stories of all kinds that have made a mark and asking what makes them work.
I mean, his stuff is jaw-droppingly shocking.
I'll be asking lots of questions. What's at the heart of the story? How does it achieve its effect? What makes it special?
History is usually written by winners, but he wants to give a voice to people who are not usually heard.
I'll be hearing from people who know and love these works. Writers.
We do have an orgasm evoked on the page.
Dramatists. Biographers.
It's worn better as a book about England than it has as a book about sex, I think.
And directors too. In the end, I'll be asking, what makes this work worth reading now? Join me to find out in Opening Lines from BBC Radio 4 and available on BBC Sounds.